There's a big problem right now when it comes to purchasing a new vehicle. Their price. They are really expensive. When the state average now in 2024 is now averaging $47,000, it's really hard to find a nice practical size SUV and a vehicle with a bunch of safety features. Well, GM has the answer because this is the Buick Envista. This has an MSRP price of just $23,000. Now there's 3 trim pieces available: the Preferred, the Sport Touring, and the Avenir, which is the one we have, and this one just costs around $29,000. Same 1.2 liter engine that's found on the Chevy Track, which this is basically off from. It's turbocharged and it's a 3-cylinder with excellent ground clearance. But this being the Buick, it has a nice luxurious exterior design, which always throws people off on what kind of vehicle this is. So in this video, we are going in depth and checking out the ins and outs, its software, the maintenance, and so much more in this video. And the reason why we're doing an intro like this is because I forgot to check the camera settings and I accidentally recorded the intro in slow motion. But regardless, let's begin. You see, first thing I like to do before we start looking at the cool features in terms of its software and stuff, I like to look underneath the hood of the car just to see how practical it is to like do an oil change in your home and apartments and stuff. So if it's similar to the previous 1.2 liter 3-cylinder Trax engine, the layout should be exactly similar, and it does take 5W30. You have a dipstick, it doesn't use a sensor. It does require you to use a stick to prompt the hood up, so give me a second. There we go. So maintenance wise, everything seems to be easy to reach. Your spark plugs are probably underneath this engine cover. Let me see if I can pull it off. Oh, I can. Yep, here's your spark plugs. Easy to access, no weird tools to remove an engine cover. It's just turbo, that's it. And it's foamy, which is quite interesting. Your air box is located here, so your filter, you'll remove it from here. Overall, easy to maintain, no difficulties in anything else. Everything looks accessible. You don't have to remove a lot of stuff to get to it. Maybe the air box. Your battery is located right here. Yep, there's the terminal for the negative and your plus. Fuse boxes, I'm assuming, is located here. I'm curious if they do provide a removal tool for your fuse box. Oh, I got it jammed in there. It's hard to do things single-handed. No, but it is nicely laid out. Oh wait, yeah, they do include the removal tool right here. Love that. Which makes repairing on the side of the road super convenient. Because I speak from experience, one time my fuse box blew out on me on a road trip. I was able to stop by a local Walmart and have it replaced on my old Camaro. Really awesome stuff here. But closing this, here's a closer look of the new Buick logo. Again, I like this, pretty minimalistic. I do like the design. I really, this front end, all right. So it gets mixed reactions. Some people love them, some people don't. Since it's this the higher trim one, we actually have dots on our grille, not a solid line. And if you get the ST version, all the chrome will be blacked out. And your headlights, they look like they'll be located here, but these are your DRLs. They're actually located down here. And there's a lot of cover over here. And indeed there was. Sorry, I'm voiceovering this because the microphone was extremely close to my throat. But the thing I noticed underneath here is that there actually is custom punch-out holes so you can unscrew to have quicker access to your oil filter as well as your oil drain plug, which I think is quite brilliant down there. That's pretty awesome. Not a lot of cars have that. But in front here is pretty standard. We do have the upgraded wheels on ours, and it is using Continental, which front-wheel drive only is the only option for this. And even with the 1.3 liter and 136 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque, the front wheels always slip out if you really do floor it with this pretty smooth driving 6-speed transmission. But the back here is pretty nice. It's mixed feelings on how the rear end looks like all the time. It's not a full SUV hatch, but it does have this cool unique spoiler, Buick, and no cutouts for your exhaust because the exhaust is located pointing downwards. Yep, there it is. But if we open this up, the tailgate is powered. And you have an additional cubby over here. This will expose the spare tire, which is nice with additional storage you could use. There's a little clip right here where if you want to lock this in place, you could just leave it like that if you really have to, if you're doing service or something like that, and just simply pull this out to put it back together. And then you also have this cargo cover But no locking or anything like that back here, unfortunately. Very standard. You do have your handle, but you just press here to close the tailgate. And of course, if you long hold that button, you could fix the height by adjusting it, long holding, and the car will beep at you to save that ride height. Your third brake light's located here. Now, an interesting thing about this car is that this is not your tail lights. Your tail lights are actually located here. So your hazards as well as your blinkers are located down there, which is quite interesting. Here's a little demonstration. So this is your brake light, right? And then these are your turn signals. And then your hazards would be where the turn signals are located. It's really interesting. I don't know how Chevy is able to get away with it. They do the same thing with the Chevy Bolt as well, where the turn signals are actually on the bottom, as well as your brake light. If this was my personal car, I'll probably remove the trim piece right here, the Buick logo, the new badging, this, because if you do like a badge delete on this, I feel like nobody will guess what kind of car this is, and the closest thing people will be guessing is probably like something like an Aston Martin or a British car of some sort. It does have that cool theme going on, especially in the rear. It's just bizarre.
An Audi it looks like?
No,
wait,
it's not an Audi.
It's a Honda. Wait. I don't know what car that is. Looks like a...
As for the key fob, this is how it looks like. Slightly updated from the previous generation Buick keys. Standard lock to unlock, panic, remote start, as well as double tap to open up your tailgate. And back here it's just black. It doesn't really offer anything, but it does have a quick release for your valet key needs. And then the door handle, this plastic part will pop out and give you access to the valet key if you need to insert it. And then only the driver and passenger sides are these smart door handles to lock or unlock the vehicle. So the gas tank, it does take regular fuel and is capless, and it can actually hold close to 13 gallons, which is quite impressive because with a full tank of gas, I was able to get close to 400 miles because this car can actually easily achieve 30 miles per gallon on average, as it does have a fuel rating between 28 miles per gallon on city and then 32 on highway, but average again is 30 miles per gallon, but I was easily able to get about 400 miles under a single tank of gas, which is quite incredible. Now back here is actually quite spacious, believe it or not, and you also have a third seat right here for your rear passenger, but it will probably be tight, would not recommend. So it's best just to leave your armrest down so you have access to cup holders. But I am 5'8", and I've surprisingly found myself having a lot of headspace all the time. But even my taller passengers are 5'10", 6'2", they had no issues sitting back here. So General Motors did a good job with this chassis. They just stretched it out, and there's a lot of like leg space. This is my sitting position, how I normally will position my seat while I'm driving, and I still have plenty of space. And then in terms of outlets, USB-C and USB-A, and that's it. You have this weird cubby right here, but I don't recommend putting stuff back here, because if you do, you hit the accelerator, it's just gonna come flying out. So that's quite interesting. There's no transmission tunnel, which is quite awesome. Front wheel drive, that's amazing. It's one of the benefits. And there's cubbies back here for your passengers, as well as a little storage on the doors back here, as you see. Now, unfortunately, there's no air vents back here. They have the useless air vents underneath the seats that blow out cold air, but no proper air vents, unfortunately. Again, I have a lot of headspace, and yes, these seats are able to be folded down to give you a lot of storage space, which let me show you how that looks like. So this is how television back here, as well as cargo and other home improvement stuff you may need to do last minute. So it is practical in terms of space. Just unfortunately, thanks to that little design back here, instead of going straight up and actually giving you a lot of real estate space, it slants down, so it's kind of like a Model Y, unfortunately, on that. But now let's go ahead and go inside the car, and let me turn off these hazards. Let's turn on the vehicle real quick, get the animation screen to pop up. And we do have an 8-inch cluster for the driver's side for your gauges and such, which I'll go more in detail in a little bit. But then you also have a 11-inch display over here for your entertainment sorts of needs. It has wireless CarPlay as well as Android Auto. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of exclusive software features. I'll show you the software stuff in a little bit, but you do have a dedicated traction control setting over here where you could have it permanently turned off here or just have it on to be a safe driver. So if you want to be loose and goosey On dirt terrain, you can just turn it off there. I'm actually quite surprised that Chevy allows its drivers to easily turn that off. And most of the time, it's like an Easter egg or a cheat code you have to input to disable that. But not with Chevy. And you do have this cool theme here. This car does have collision warning, so it does have blind spot monitoring here. It does have all the important features. Your lane keep assist buttons located here, as well as your engine auto start and stop at a red light. Wireless charger is located here. Your inputs are USB-A as well as the USB-C. Cup holders has an interesting design here that mimics like carbon fiber for the shift knob for some reason. But over here you have this Buick design following through all the way to across the dash. This is one of the massive differences between this and the Trax, the Chevy Trax. But everything else you'll see is pretty much identical to the Trax. The seats are uniquely designed to the Buick, and depending on the trim piece, you'll see stitching right here. But we have this Tron pattern, it looks like, which doesn't really follow the design of the interior of the car in my opinion. But you do see a lot more of that interesting pattern you see here on the shift knob. And since we do have the power lift gate, you do have this ability to manually open it up here, as well as set the certain height, or you can have it off entirely if you don't want that. But cubbies in the door, that's nothing out of the ordinary. And your steering wheel is manually adjusted as well. But a thing I have noticed is the steering wheel itself. If you look at the very bottom, it is a flat bottom steering wheel, which I don't think the Trax had. So this design is unique to the Buick. This one does feature the heated steering wheel, as well as your adaptive cruise control settings. Your fan speed for your AC is located here. This one it's not dual, but I'm assuming there is a dual option you could opt for. But you do have heated seats. I'm not sure if ventilated seats is available for this model, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a touchscreen, but all your important climate controls are physical buttons, as well as your volume over here for media. There are also media buttons right here. You can adjust the audio from the back portion of your steering wheel, and this will be your skip tracks. And then above me, there is no sunroof, but that is an option you can opt for. The one we have here, our test unit, does not have one. But everything else, you do have a glove box, standard glove box size, nothing out of the ordinary. The material is not real leather, but feels super nice to touch. You can also find it on the dash too. It's like nice and soft. It's not hard plastic. Less likely to crack like the harder ones typically would if you expose it to sunlight a lot. It's genuinely not a bad car. Now let's talk about its software features that this thing has. You see this cluster can be customizable by long holding this button over here and then releasing. You have these different gauges to choose from. Gauge 1 looks like this, very typical standard like Colorado style it looks like. Gauge 2 gives you this layout, again very similar to like an old school Spark. Gauge 3, which is vehicle information, is my personal preference, allows you to see your MPG. Had this vehicle on idle, that's why it's averaging 29, but I have easily achieved 30 miles per gallon without even trying. And then infotainment would be like what media you're listening to. Right now we have our stereo system turned off, so it's not displaying anything. But this will be where you'll see like what song is playing. And clean will just be a clean layout. As you see right here, very classy, very simple. Just your speedometer, that's all you need. But this icon where it shows you those two vehicles, that basically shows you the seconds that you are away from the car in front. Really interesting stuff. Now, another cool thing about this car is accessory. So we all know by not putting your foot on the brake pedal and then tapping on the push to start, once will turn on your accessory mode, right? But there's like a 5-minute timer. After 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it will automatically turn off and you have to redo it again. If you want to bypass that and make it permanent, don't put your foot on a brake. Just long hold this until you hear the green light start beeping at you. And now you are in accessory mode, but this time it will not go off unless you manually turn it off. So that's how you can increase the duration of accessory mode. And if you're wondering about the backup camera, unfortunately it's one of these standard ones. Pretty high res, but not crazy high res. It's doable. It's not 360, unfortunately. All right, driving the Buick Envista. You know, honestly, when I first got in this car, it reminds me a lot like the Chevy Trax. It still has a very nice looking interior, but this one looks even better because of the design elements of a Buick. Sorry if I'm adjusting the air vents right now. It's like 100 degrees outside, so I'm trying to stay cool as much as possible while also trying to speak clearly so you guys can understand me better. But even with the fan speed down a little bit, cruising at around 30, we're about to approach the freeway, so you guys get a real feel how the 3-cylinder actually handles merging onto the freeway. From my understanding, 0-60 is like in the mid 9 seconds, like 9.4 was the best one I was able to find online from Car and Driver, I believe it was. So here's an on-ramp to the highway. Pedal down to the floor. There we go. Engine is screaming. And then we somewhat lose power, but now we are at 60 miles per hour merging onto the freeway. So 9 seconds, 0-60 is practical because that was an uphill acceleration. I was able to merge on the freeway just fine. But when it comes to passing power, if I just floor it right now, it's like a 5-second delay, what feels like a 5-second delay for the engine to start kicking up to safely pass like a slow-moving vehicle. So for passing purposes, this is not really the car you want to do that in. But it does get up and go in terms of taking you point A to B in comfort, because this seat's actually quite comfortable for its price. Of course, there's no ventilation, which would be nice right now during the hot summer temperature. And it'd be like some noise reducing technology. That was one of the things I noticed that Buick was highlighting about this car on the website. And it's fairly quiet for an inexpensive car as it is. I'm quite impressed. I'm used to the days where something like this, like a decade ago, was probably like a Chevy Spark, and it just felt like I was driving like a tin can. Even like a Kia Soul, as an example, it just had that aluminum tint to everything. So I'm actually quite impressed how like the sound quality is. But again, this is exactly the same experience, if I recall, from the Chevy Trax. So for $3,000 more from the MSRP starting price between the Trax and the Buick, you're just paying for the style elements and the unique design interior, because this one actually feels like a luxury car. The Trax felt like a sporty cross, basically like a all-purpose, like a Subaru type of thing. Like you could expose it to the harshest elements without feeling guilty, because the Trax, that's what it felt like. It could handle abuse. Braking power is pretty good too, as well, like any modern day vehicle. But again, it's not an enthusiast car. But for somebody who just wants a vehicle just to go A and B, have all the important safety features, as well as modern day function features like wireless charging, wireless CarPlay, Android, wireless Android Auto, there you go. This is it. This is definitely the car, and I really do like the adaptive cruise control. I don't really, I own vehicles that have like some type of autopilot systems, like my old Teslas. My BMW has the advanced driver assist, which is basically autopilot, and I don't use it. I don't ever use them. When I had my Camaro, I used the cruise control by itself. My Raptor has adaptive cruise control, and that's what I primarily like using. I like to just focus and having the steering wheel in the center of the lane instead of having to have my hands off, because it still requires you to have your hands on the steering wheel. So I find those type of features kind of pointless at times. Adaptive cruise control, in my opinion, is what you need, but I know everybody has their own personal preferences. That's just my 2 cents right there. Again, it drives like an economy car. It's not terrible, it's not the greatest. And in the front, there is a collision warning as well, so it will alert you before you collide. It's not a heads-up display hole that you see up there. It's just a little flashing red light that will appear. And the second meter in front, where it actually will monitor the distance in front of the car in front of me in terms of seconds, like how many seconds they are ahead of me. That's quite interesting. But just like I said with the Trax, you get a lot of car for its value. But if you're trying to preserve as much money as possible, I would highly advise going with the Trax, because it's more durable. This is just more for like, I guess if you're just looking for luxury, I guess. Just test drive both of those cars and you'll see what I mean. Overall, this is definitely a great affordable SUV. If you're looking for something smaller, not a full-size Yukon, something easy to drive, especially in a crowded environment like a city, but also offering plenty of space for you and your spouse. And if you have kids later on, anchor points are available for your seating. But As they grow up, you may want to consider possibly upgrading to a larger vehicle with more backseat space with storage. But all the safety modern day features you expect to find on a modern day car, this is really an excellent value. So I highly recommend checking out this if you're looking for an efficient, large SUV for its value. All the modern day safety features, stylish modern day look that won't harm the bank. The Envista is definitely a car you may want to check out, but I also recommend checking out the Trax to save a little bit more if you're looking for something more durable, more rugged in its design. The Envista is more like a luxury focus economy car. So if you want to check out the Trax and see what are the differences between the two, see for yourself, there's that video right there on the end card. Thank you so much for watching.